And
showtime.
Aloha! Dude,
how are you, sir?
I am so happy to have you on this webinar.
Oh man, happy to be here.
Everybody, this is my dear friend Brent Bushnell, who is one of my favorite human beings.
Aww.
I classify human beings separately from dogs because I really love dogs, and
and I don't want to compete.
Most of the list is comprised of dogs, but as far as human beings go, man, you're at the top. Thanks for joining.
Thanks so much for having me. Psyched to be on here. I wish I was where you are. We could be doing this live, but I'll settle for downtown LA.
We can reschedule and get on a plane. Yeah, trying to find time for you to fly to Hawaii probably isn't going to happen in the short term.
One of these days.
So just a little bit of background. Brent and I have known each other for a long time. I'm not
years.
Going back to the U-Wink days, probably 15, 20 years ago. And he's the co-founder of a company called Two Bit Circus, which has done a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about today, and amazing, pushing the envelopes of location-based entertainment and VR and that intersection. And so, and Brent is one of the busiest people I know, and so corralling him into this. And actually, the funny thing is, we've been trying to schedule just a conversation to catch up on a personal level between the two of us for months. And so we have to do it now, and everybody can just watch in. And
that's awesome.
So let's start with let's just start with a little bit of background for people who might not know. Like the one person who's been living in a cave. Where'd you come from?
Yeah, this has been like kind of a wild ride. My background's computer science and electrical engineering. My co-founder is a roboticist. And really around like 2008, he and I were pretty frustrated with the fact that everybody was on their phones and on Facebook and not together live. And we thought live was awesome. And so we started collaborating, making a bunch of... Yeah. Good, exactly. And we thought live was awesome. So we started making interactive art, things that we could take to parties. We made an interactive whiteboard where, you draw on the whiteboard and a camera would pick up what you drawn, and then, a physics simulation would drop, and bounce off the stuff that you drew. Those interactive art pieces turned into games, and all of our stuff was really focused on social, right? Particularly elbow to elbow, getting you live in person playing games against each other. We were taking that stuff to parties and people liked it, so we kept making more stuff. And pretty soon Microsoft was calling and saying, hey, would you bring all that stuff to our holiday party and our E3 party. And we had ourselves a high-tech circus, and started doing those as rentals, and then finally ended up building our own traveling carnival before finally opening up our own permanent facility where I'm standing right now today in my office. But opposite that wall is 38,000 square foot micro amusement park that we opened a year ago.
Wow, awesome. So I've actually somewhere here, I've got a couple of YouTube videos that I want to try to play.
Oh, cool.
There it is. So this is the theme carnival in Hawthorne. So I was lucky enough to follow your journey, and you created these. The first two were in big. One was in San Francisco. Was it Pier 39?
Yeah, Pier. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting it. 49 or something. But it was, we're talking 120,000 square feet, right? 3 football fields of content. And so we had all the kind of stuff that we'd made for ourselves, and then a bunch of stuff we'd made for brands, kind of all in one place.
And then you brought in all these sponsors, like big corporates got behind this thing. It was
huge. IBM, Intel, Autodesk, Disney, Time Warner Cable, like the list was 40 brands long. And they'd really gotten excited, A, around the physicality, but B, we called it STEAM Carnival for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And so in addition to all this fun entertainment, we had a bunch of hands-on projects where kids could learn about programming and fabrication and kind of all the fundamentals they needed to be able to build the stuff. Our message was, listen, we built these things. It's not that hard. You can too. Here's how.
And you had what, 30-something thousand people come through in a weekend?
Every single day, 5,000 people a day. It was just bananas. Got about 250 million media impressions. But the part that was freaking terrible was we did all of that for 3 days, right? We set all that stuff up, 120,000 square feet of stuff, so that we could open on a Friday. And then literally we were taking it all down on a Sunday. And we were like, oh my God, like we can never do this again. Like that was terrible. I've never been as exhausted my whole life. It took the whole company a month just to get the fire back. And that was really what kicked off this permanent park. Was we said, hey, we've clearly hit something, right? We sold out, all this media attention, people are psyched, but this is not the model that will scale. This is not the model that will work.
But the original concept was to take that and put it on rail cars, right?
Yeah.
Or something, and take it around like a traveling circus. And so what was which is dramatic and romantic.
Yeah,
right?
I love trains, and I'm obsessed with circus and carnival. And so you're right. The romance of that was something that was part of the sort of original framing. But, contrast that with the reality of, setting all that stuff up. And we're talking about interactive, right? Bob, if you and I were a rock band, we could play the local bar, or we could play Staples Center. And really what we need are bigger speakers, right? And we can entertain 10 people or 10,000. When you're talking about interactive stuff, it scales linearly. If I want to go from entertaining 10 people to 10,000, I need that many more games. And so at that size, it just was backbreaking, trying to have that many interactive things for that many people, 5,000 people a day entertained, is major. Yeah. So, and at that time, we're talking about sort of 2015, Macy's is closing down, Toys R Us is closing down, all this big box retail is going away. And so we're like, listen, here we have this thing that people want to get out of their homes in order to go do. What's the format we could put in 100 cities across the country?
Yeah. Now, before we move into that, I got an email today. I wrote about STEAM in my most recent blog, and I got an email from somebody saying I spelled it wrong. It's supposed to be STEM. Why did you add the A? Because I think you guys were one of the first to do that.
I was really inspired by John Maeda from RISD, and I'd heard him give a talk being like, listen, art is critical, right? My background's engineering, and the creative part of that is super exciting. And hell, it was what got us really excited about this was the art and the creativity supported by the STEM. And so I'd heard him describe this concept STEAM, and we said, that's us, STEAM, that's that, we get it. And so we were sort of one of the early ones to really popularize that term, and we got it in Time magazine and on the Discovery Channel, and sort of as we launched that Kickstarter for the carnival, managed to really sort of do a lot of, frankly, educating people on why the art and the creativity is important. It was unfortunate that STEM happened the way that it did at all. The art and the creative has always been part of the process. It just sort of wasn't part of the acronym. So we're big fans of STEAM.
And so now you've created this thing called STEAM Carnival, right? Or the physical permanent manifestation of it in LA. And I've got, and actually I didn't do the Hawthorne thing. I got so distracted by our conversation. I do want to go back to this because I think this is the heart of STEAM is captured in this video.
And so this is a video that we did to back up a little bit, what happened after we left San Francisco was we split the company in two. We launched a nonprofit foundation to focus on all of the learning side, right? And so this is kids making their own games, throwing their own carnival. That's the video you're watching right now. A bunch of local schools built their own stomp rockets. There's Richard Branson making a video about it. So super exciting.
World of innovation, and in fact,
and then the other company, Two Bit Circus, building these amusement parks.
Your generation has the power.
That was one of the other critical things that happened as we left San Francisco.
Chasing your ambition,
two different enterprises. One that is out there with schools inspiring kids, and one that is out there, building these destination entertainment complexes for people to come and play.
And so let's talk about the foundation a little bit. Like what is it, and what's it doing now? And I know you got a lot of support, like from Mayor Garcetti and the city of Los Angeles. Like that, I haven't talked about it in a couple of years. Where's it gone?
So it's really working, right? So we launched the foundation a couple of years ago. We've since acquired 4 nonprofits. We've merged with nonprofits. So imagination.org, if you remember Kane's Arcade and the Cardboard Challenge, Trash for Teaching, which is a group that collects clean waste and packages them up as art supplies for schools. So as an example, Sees Candies, buys too many heart-shaped boxes for Valentine's Day. It's after Valentine's Day and they've got extra sharp heart-shaped boxes. Instead of throwing them away and putting them in a landfill, they give them to us and we turn those into tools for kids. Trash for Teaching, LA Makerspace, right? Physical tools. And so now in literally half the schools in LA, we deploy the tools, we provide the materials, we train the teachers, and then, provide the curriculum and the events. So, full replacement for the science fair. Kids make their own games and then throw their own carnival.
Wow. And so the reason I'm so interested in that, and for a big part of this audience, is, there's all these VR arcades that have opened around the world, right? And I'll take I'm not going to talk about the China ones because there's a very unique market. It has its own attributes, but in the US and and Europe and Russia, we're seeing these VR arcades pop up, and a lot of them, most of them, are marginal from a profitability standpoint. And what the owners have done is bought themselves kind of like a full-time medium wage job.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the things that they need to do to expand beyond that, and Bill Tustin, who's one of the members in my mentoring group, has done a great job of this, is integrating STEAM programs into their business with camps and school groups and stuff. Do you guys, how are you expanding this? Is there a way? So I guess 2 questions. Can you take this curriculum, package it up, and licensing it to third parties who have the physical computer infrastructure to do VR and stuff, but don't know how to do it or have the content? Or B, how do they do it themselves? I guess those are 2 questions.
Yeah, and so we've done exactly that. We've worked with groups all over the world. Not only are we in half the schools of LA, but we're in 80 countries now. We got chapters all over the place. And so, that curriculum, there's, as a result of that, there's lots of different ways to engage. There's, a couple hours of teacher training to multiple days of teacher training. The kinds of tools, the kinds of projects all depend on the kinds of resources available. And I love that that's where those VR arcades are going, because it makes sense, right? You want to be able to have lots of different day part optimizations. What are we doing, Monday morning, 9 a.m.? It's gonna be different than 9 p.m. Friday night.
And you guys do a great job of that. So if somebody's interested in learning more about the STEAM programs and how to access them, how do they find that information?
I can connect them. 2bitcircus.org is the landing page for all that, and there's a whole team of 17 people, deploying all that stuff, and I can either put them directly in touch or go to that website and they'll respond.
Awesome, and I'll put that in the speaker notes if you're getting this on
Beautiful.
On the
and hey, and folks in LA, we have an anti-gala for this whole thing coming up in 2 weeks, literally October 14th. And since galas suck, we called it our anti-gala.
You know what? I saw the dates come out, and I was supposed to be in Australia. My schedule, and I think I'm going to be in America, and so save me a ticket.
Dude, it's going to be so fun. We basically took all the things that are terrible about galas and threw them out. So, instead of a seated dinner with tables, we're organizing groups into teams. We've got a whole freaking scavenger hunt adventure Olympics that goes around the whole park. A super silent auction with the mime auctioneer. Cool. Our dunk tank flambe. So we'll be immersing people in fire. It's going to be nuts.
Well, if anybody's interested in getting a group together and going to that in LA on October 14th, just either put something in the chat or drop me an email at vrbob@bobcooney.com and let's have a party. I just nice. I'm so glad you reminded us of that.
It's gonna be fun. Yeah.
So all right, so now let's talk about day parts, right? Because that's something I think you guys think a lot about and probably do as good a job of anybody managing day parts. And before we get to that, the term arcade, one of the things that I've been kind of starting to suggest is that arcade owners think about broadening their audience and broadening the terminology they use to describe their business. And you chose micro amusement park to describe yours and not an arcade. What was your thinking behind the branding and labeling of that?
Yeah, so we really wanted to differentiate from the other things that are out there, because what we've done here is different. We really wanted to underscore that difference. And, you know, hey, that's not without its challenges. Nobody knows what a micro amusement park is. So that was, you know, a little bit of a problem, you know, in that, you know, the wonderful thing about, you know, established terms is people know what to expect. You know what to do with a new restaurant. You know what to do with a movie. You know, when you go to a movie on Harry Potter opening night, you know to expect something different than the movie that's been running for weeks. And so we really had to do some education there. But part of why we wanted to go that extra mile was because it is different. And you know, we wanted to say, hey, this place is a place that has an arcade inside it, as well as other things, right? We've got our version of escape rooms we call story rooms. We've got a 100-seat interactive game show theater. We've got a carnival midway, full restaurant, full bar. You know, this is a lot of things a normal arcade doesn't have. And so if we used the word arcade, it would have been a misnomer.
Yeah. And so and so educating people to that term, I think one of the reasons that a lot of the VR arcade operators like using the arcade is because it grounds the people who want to go to an arcade. The problem for me is that VR offers so much more than that. And if you're going to offer Steam camps and you know, nobody wants to take no parent is going to sign off on a permission slip for their kids to go to an arcade. Right. And so I think that, you know, I've been like suggesting experience center or something, but I feel like the industry needs to pivot to another term. Broaden it. You can still advertise it to a certain group as an arcade. And you know, how have you done that? Like, how have you positioned this for corporate events and for like in school groups? Do they want to go to amusement park? Like, what's
it's really fascinating. And, you know, and candidly, we're still kind of schizophrenic about it. Do we market Two Bit Circus as a concept, or are we marketing individual attractions inside of it? Come here for the game show. Come here for the story room. You know, because those are different spends, and we still don't know the right answer, frankly. And have been trying lots of different stuff to see which resonates the best. But the brand building part of it has been important to us. You know, hey, come to Two Bit Circus. It's a place that is different than other things.
Any early learnings on the marketing that you can share, like any nuggets or like?
You know, the most fascinating realization, you know, just going back to day part optimization that I can't believe I didn't sort of see earlier coming is, you know, we want to sell to general consumers and we want to sell to corporate, you know, users for their special events. And, you know, there's sort of different teams out there doing that. There's your marketing team out there selling tickets for, you know, Friday's game show. And there's your events team out there selling intel for their holiday party or their corporate event. Those things are literally competing for the same scarce resource. And the risk is your marketing team just sold 100 tickets to Friday's show. And Intel just swooped in and said, hey, we're going to pay literally 10x what you would make that night on the general consumer, but you got to refund all those tickets. And so it's sort of this weird quandary where, you know, the revenue is much better in the event space, but it's sort of big fuck you to your customers to say, oh, hey, remember that thing I sold you? Sorry, never mind. You know, and the challenge is there's not really an optimization. It's just a compromise. And the only way we've really sort of routed around that is to say, hey, we're not allowed to sell total buyouts a week less than a week in advance. And, you know, these are the things these are the right nights. And, you know, but because those teams are competing for the same thing, you kind of are stuck with that.
Yeah. By the way, you're not allowed to say fuck you on the show.
Sorry, I was going to say.
I'm just kidding. That's a joke. I put an R rating on this on YouTube. Awesome. And so, all right. So I want to get to this video because I think this will give you an idea of for people who haven't been there, and a lot of people haven't been there yet because, you know, I've got an audience all over the world.
I'm repairing. I need more energy.
You know, it's so interesting to see that video because, you know, we opened this place literally half finished and have been adding a bunch of stuff as we've been going, kind of building the plane as we've been flying it. And that was an early edit. There's so much new stuff in there now. I can't wait for you to see the latest.
But the energy is really good. And all right, so I'm gonna give you, which I know and you've heard this, but I'm gonna ask a couple of difficult questions, which is that I've talked to a lot of people in the industry that have, like, everybody's going, like, anybody who's anybody in this business who's building retail entertainment facilities is flying to LA to see your place, to see what's happening. And like Michael Schreiber from Fun Lab in Melbourne, Australia has been there. And like people from I don't know if you know this, but they're coming from all over the world. And I assume they're connecting with you, but some of them might be secret shopping you. And one of the narratives is it's under attractioned. There's not enough to do.
Totally.
And so
and it drives me nuts.
And how are you addressing it?
Yeah, so the size out here is not accidental, right? We wanted one floor of a department store so that we could be a drop-in replacement. We have made 60-ish% of the stuff that's on the floor, and that was part of our intention. Is we wanted a lot of unique and new stuff, but we had to build it all. And so, launching half finished. I mean, part of me wishes we'd had a big beta, over the side of the building that I would still not take off today. I think we'll be at sort of 1.0 by the end of the year, beginning of next year, because, they're right. We are super under attraction, and it's a nightmare. On a Friday, Saturday night, there's more people in here than can play games. And but the challenge was we didn't want to go and just buy a bunch of the same stuff, and we wanted to make sure that there was some uniqueness there. So it's definitely been a struggle.
Yeah, and you and I had a conversation right around opening, because you were getting pressure to scale and open 5 new locations, and I was like, slow the fuck down, because if you replicate your mistakes 5 times,
it's even worse.
Now you can't recover from that. And so how has that impacted your expansion plans? And what's, not to get too much into the future, but let's talk about the future.
No, it was really great advice, and it's something that we implemented, because this even knowing what the right size was, we went out and surveyed 100 sites across the country, and ended up converging on something that was more replicatable, and wanted that Lego brick that we could replicate over and over again. And so this year has been invaluable in figuring out what that is, and what that format, what attractions belong, and we're getting closer. We still haven't figured it out. We got a bunch of new stuff coming online, but when we first opened, I was like, oh my God, nobody come.
It's terrifying, isn't it? That's the challenge of the artist, of any creator and entrepreneur. I've been convinced. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I've questioned my own creativity. And Kylie Savage, my partner, said, being an entrepreneur is the ultimate act of creation, and I've come to understand that and appreciate that in entrepreneurs. And it's terrifying for any artist to put their thing out there in the world, right? That's the
and especially because I know where it's going and where it's gonna, where we could get to. But when you walk in, I don't get to talk to everybody, and so the risk is people are like, that's it, really, and I'm like, no, but really, it's gonna get different. But we kind of couldn't get to that thing without being able to get open and start testing training and see what people resonate with. You kind of have to, you need that learning period critically.
You learn by doing. And so one of the, and by the way, I want you to know, everybody's rooting for you. Even your competitors are like, I really hope they figure that out, because so many people love what you're doing. And I think you and the team and Eric and there's just so much, honesty and authenticity in that group. And so everybody is rooting for you to succeed.
Nice.
So take that to heart.
That's great.
How do you, a lot of companies have raised money. I know you guys have raised money. And how are you managing that tension between the investors wanting you to hit numbers in a business plan and a projection for growth, with the need to get it right and to slow down? And any advice for entrepreneurs that have raised money based on a plan, and they're realizing that they're having to slow down a little bit because they haven't quite figured it out before they expand?
You know, it's interesting. I think that, you know, the market pressures and even the act of pitching a concept and getting that feedback are all the parts of sort of helping to refine that plan, right? You know, and I love that old Helmuth quote, no battle plan survives engagement with the enemy. You know, it's like you've got a plan, but then instantly you start updating it as you discover new data. And you know, and I think that, you know, the investor expectations are not wrong, right? You know, they need those things. They want you know, in order, you know, business, you know, the machine has to work, but you know, so that helps to inform the plan. But, you know, there is always going to be this like creative tension between like, hey, no, it's not ready. We can't open. We gotta, you know, like, I think unless you're uncomfortable, you're probably launching too late. You know, like, I think that there really should be, you shouldn't feel like it's perfect, because A, it'll never be perfect, but B, you so rarely know the really important things to think about. You know, I mean, when I think about the number of possibility trees we were trying to keep in our head before we opened, you know, we needed real life to inform our decision making. We weren't sure, should we charge a ticket at the door or should people pay as they go? Completely different ramifications. And to try to keep both of those in our brains, you know, is a nightmare. You need to sort of put a line in the sand and say, okay, it's free to get in, you pay as you go, you know, and it has ripple effects. And I'm glad we made that decision. I think it was the right one, but it was, you know, we needed to launch in order to validate it. You know, yeah, I think that it's you know, raising capital is exciting. You know, but it does come with all of the, you know, those additional expectations, but it gives you scale to be able to, you know, to deliver in a bigger way. I've definitely had to become, you know, comfortable with things being unfinished, you know, and that's been hard, you know. I mean, because really, I do want to see you know, so much more down there than we've got right there.
Yeah, there's a term that I hate saying, but I find I say it a lot in VR, which is good enough. You know,
yeah,
because I you know, we all have this vision of what things can be and should be. Don't like that word. And yet for like the public that hasn't done VR at all, they put on a headset, they're like, even Google Cardboard, they're like,
oh my God, it's mind-blowing,
right?
Yeah.
So,
I actually said to my old roommate from college, I was like, dude, everybody's talking about VR. And he was like, no, you're talking about VR.
Yeah.
Nobody else is. And I was like, oh, okay, that's it. You know, we're in our own little bubble, you know.
Yeah. And that's the thing I also find is like, you don't talk about VR in your marketing stuff at all, I don't think. And that's a big thing I've been, you know, talking to people is like, don't sell VR, sell the experience. And I think Micro Amusement Park is evocative. It's small, it's an amusement park, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually not that hard to figure out.
You know what a microbrewery is? You know, I'm glad that you noticed that. You know, and part of it for us was, you know, VR is a cool technology, you know, but it's not the end all be all. So the experience is the thing. And you know, my concern is that, you know, and STEM is a good example. All the companies that launched with STEM are sort of getting invalidated almost by Steam as the world changes, right? We know the tech is going to change, and AR and mixed reality, and the industry is so schizophrenic about what to call it all, that we stepped away from aligning with the tech, and we just said, hey, here's fun, come for fun, whatever the tech is of the day, you know, we're gonna, you know, explore having it.
Yeah, and so let's talk about VR because that's
because it's awesome. Yeah,
and it is awesome. And so, like, how much VR do you have? Like, there's a shit ton of it there. And what have you learned about it? And I know you've taken some things out and you're changing some things. So, what have your learnings been specifically around virtual reality?
So, you know, VR is awesome. People love it. They come and they love to play it. Social VR is awesome. You know, we've got you know, 2 and 4 player stuff, which sells way more than the single player stuff. People love the social, and that's an important one. It can be social, even though I don't see you in real life, Bob. Seeing your avatar and knowing your mannerisms and being able to hear your voice in my ear, that's social. You know, and just the subtlety of the audio track of being able to talk to each other and knowing we're seeing the same thing, super social and awesome. So really love that. Backpacks are difficult, you know, backpacks, right? You and I both know everything you put in the hands of the consumer is going to break. It's just a question of how long. Yeah. 3D glasses are awesome because they're freaking so inexpensive. But when you put a $2,000 backpack and a $1,000 headset on people, you know, somebody's going to take it off too quickly and drop it. They're going to, you know, just be, you know, people are just reckless with stuff. And so, you know, really being aware of the fact that everything's going to break. Battery charging, right? That they're, you know, they're running out. The person last night didn't, you know, forgot to charge them, so now they're not charged today, and you know that's a big thing. Whether you're talking about you know just the controllers or the full blown you know batteries for the backpack.
Sounds like you're talking about the laser tag business. This is taking me back to the 90s.
You know, I mean, this is all, you know, what's old is new again. But those things are all as true today as they ever were. You know, yeah. and you know, wonderfully the tech is getting great, and things like the Vive Pro. You know, the headphones are built in, and the you know the mask is wipeable with a you know an anti you know bacterial, you know, that's so much better than the open foam of the 1.0, right? Those things just sopped up sweat and gross. They were just a you know bacteria festering nightmare, you know. But now they're closed foam, and you can wipe them down much easier. So I think a lot of that stuff, you know, there's real, as you know, because a lot of people are doing VR for the first time, they don't even know how to treat this stuff. Right, you know, sorry for the analogy, but you know what to do with a public toilet, right? They've got those little things. You're going to put the seat cover on it. VR headset, you kind of need to train people. Like, hey, we're going to clean this down for you. And with time, as more people know to do that, maybe less staff will be involved because you'll know how to handle the VR headset. But if it's your first time, we've still got to sort of guide people along and have a staff member there to help you, you know, get on board.
I heard
and so, you know, it's definitely going to get easier.
Sorry, you buffered. I've got a island internet connection, and I talked over you. So sorry about that.
No. What did you say?
Oh well, so you've got like I know you have a couple of hologates now. You've got you had some VR cubes that I understand you're taking out or have taken out.
We've taken out a couple of them and replaced some of the single player VR with another hologate. We have some seated stuff that we collaborated. So we took D-Box chairs, ripped their arms off, added our own joysticks, and then worked with some third-party content creators like Ubisoft and Rebellion to adapt, you know, some of their content, roller coasters, a tank game, to a multiplayer environment. We just bought our first sort of all-enclosed solution from VRarsenal for Beat Saber, so that you've got a nice big, you know, display there, and you walk up and you can self-serve.
Bunch of stuff going on with him and his company, and more about him than the company, but which I'm gonna write an article in Replay Magazine and kind of try to clear the air a little bit. But how's the I hear the product's amazing, and it's like crushing it everywhere.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a great, you know, it's got the nice big display so people on the outside can see what's happening. You know, they've got the cables, you know, are wrapped inside of a nice metal, you know, sheath, and so that's awesome. And the controllers and the same thing. You know, again, people are brutal with gear, and so you know, there's been parts where we've had to sort of like reconfigure a few things, but it is, you know, overall, it's an amazing device that is really, you know, doing gangbusters.
How's the and I know you have or had the maze from Triotech. Which was a single player, short duration backpack based system.
Yeah, I love that thing. And, you know, and it really is mixed reality, you know, not just VR. You've got the fan in your face, you've got the vibrating floor. People love it. And the other thing that both Hologate and, you know, Asterion are doing is they're updating the content regularly, faster than I can do it, which is a great sign. You know, I'm here all the time and I don't get to try all the stuff, you know? And so, you know, they just launched Assassin's Creed in Asterion. You know, we just got a freaking escape room in Hologate, and they've got another one coming. So, you know, it's really neat to see them treating these like their own platform with new content to be able to push down. And you know, they're putting out great stuff.
How important is that to you as an operator, to, you know, as far as that game refresh when investing in these things as platforms?
So I can't understate enough how critical it is, because, you know, this is a locals place. And if you're building something for tourists, you don't care how much it's updated. You could have it updated every 2 years, you know, but for a locals thing, I need new content just like a movie theater, right? You know, I need to be able to have new stuff every couple of months so that when people come back, we've got new entertainment for them.
So let me play devil's advocate to that for a second, which is that
Sure.
you go to an arcade and, you know, Raw Thrills brought out Pac-Man again on a giant LED screen, right? With big LED, lighted electric, whatever those things are. And that game's 30 years old. Like, so, like, if the game's good enough, do you really need multiple games? Because my understanding is all that anybody ever plays in Hollowgate is Zombite. Like, that's 80% of the play across the network.
You know, it's interesting. I do think that, you know, you could split that into two categories of like story-based versus game-based. Like, if you are building a skill, playing Pac-Man, you can be better at Pac-Man or worse at Pac-Man, then that works, you know? And so I think that's a kind of a good way to think about it. Now, something like Hollowgate, Zombite is not good for my 9-year-old niece on any level, you know? And so it would reduce the number of you know, the people that can play it, because I freaking love Zombite. It's scary as shit, you know? I mean, those zombies come right into your face. And so, you know, so there's that. There's a whole category of people that don't like shooters. We've had a bunch of different folks here who have been like, whoa, no thanks. But you get in there in Groove Guardians, that's a rhythm game. You know, that's super fun. You know, you get into their snowball game and all of a sudden my niece goes nuts. And so I do think that there's content for different sort of psychographic and different demographic. But, you know, and so I think there's that piece. But then sure enough, yeah, these things are repeatable. You can get better at it. You find the one you love and you play it a lot.
Yeah, and I do think there's, you know, it's really good that you broke that down, because there's really 2 points. One is, you know, repeatability, and the other is variety. And they're two different things, and they're and one might be more important than another based on
what you prioritize. Yes, I think that's a great category. And you and other people might have different, you know, logic, or they might bias towards, you know, repeatability because they know the people that are going to come back, it's the gamers in their town, and that's it, you know, or they're looking for a broader swath and they need to go a different direction.
Yeah, cool. So earlier you touched on your pricing decision of, you know, pay as you go versus pay at the door. I want to unpack that a little bit for everybody if we can. Like how did you make the decision? What were your you know, what was your decision tree like, and what have you learned?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, it's interesting. You think about the way that Disneyland launched, or the way that Carnival, you know, it was those e-tickets, right? And you get different tickets for different things, and then they went to pay once and you're off and running. And so we were like, gosh, you know, they figured that out. Maybe we should be doing it like that. But the big tiebreaker for us was, it's a locals place, right? We wanted there to be no friction for you, Bob, and I to come after work, come in, have a beer, and leave. If we stayed for 30 minutes, that we could do that. And that was the critical one. And we felt like if it was a tourist thing, great, do it one purchase, because that's the only time they're gonna come. And so, you know, you could be predictable that way. But we really wanted to make sure that it was possible for folks to.
And so what have you, and are you solid in that decision? Was that the right choice for you guys?
I feel really good about it. You know, I mean, I've got a little confirmation bias in that that's the one we went with, but you know, I really do believe.
Yeah. And then what about, and I think that part of that decision had to be a big part of your business as you go to a restaurant and charge people to get in. Your bar and restaurant revenue is going to be significantly impacted. What's the experience been with food and beverage, and how big of a part of your business is that?
Yeah, you know, the F&B is important. You know, people, you know, having a full bar has been great. You know, a lot of folks have come. I've talked to friends of mine, just anecdotally, they've come and they've played us a handful of games, and it's their 4th time because they're just coming to drink. You know, it's a fun environment to do that. So that's been great. The alcohol side, you know, and the drink side has been good. You know, food is hard, right? You know, I was talking to somebody who was like, you know, that's why they call it food service. You know, it's sort of like a, you know, it's a requirement, but not necessarily the, you know, the thing where you completely win. And part of it is, it's peak food right now. There's so many awesome things, and people make an entire business around just this one croissant, and that's all they do, and they crush it at that. You know, and we've got all of this other stuff and adding food on top of it. It's taken a little while to get that machine going, and we've got now a new menu, you know, based on our learnings for this year. We've got some new menu items we're adding, but the food is good. I like to call it farm to circus, where, you know, it's basically locally grown, sustainable, good, you know, ingredients, done in sort of a fun, you know, reimagined way. We've got sliders and fried stuff, you know, but we sort of took health food and made it as
yeah, Jason's asking, alcohol and VR, any issues there that you've experienced?
You know, it really hasn't been a problem. And we were really worried about that. That was one of the things in the very beginning. We were like, oh my God, what's this going to happen? And, you know, it's really about, I think, also a selection of content. You know, we're still seeing people making driving games and things that move the camera. That's the stuff that makes people nauseous, right? And we don't have almost any of that. And so really, you know, I think if you select content that wouldn't make people nauseous anyway, then it's not going to be a problem with alcohol.
And so do you have, so I want to stick on the food for a second, because I know how hard it is. I started my first real scaled business was a pizza restaurant chain of delivery restaurants. Do you have a chef? Do you have a separate team that does that? Like, what's the infrastructure to be able to pull it off?
Yeah, we started with a chef and then moved to a food consultant. And what we are just about to layer in right now is the creations of the food consultant. They are, you know, that food consultant is doing all the menu costing, all the design, and then training.
And why that change? Like, what's the? I have my own imagination of what that would be, but what's the difference?
You know, for a single location, you don't need a full-time chef. Is the reality, you know, and you can, you know, I mean, it's a very definable project for a food consultant to build out a food program and then move on.
And they probably have
project.
A broader, you know, perspective of what's possible and what's working in the market.
They just did it for the last 6 projects were, you know, great cocktail restaurants in downtown LA, and they got a sense of the whole landscape. Yeah. That's their business, you know, and so that was
cool.
Really
awesome.
That was really
now you also do these live events, the game room. I've got one more video here that I want to share with people. I think this is the game show is a really unique part of what you guys.
Club 01, our interactive game show theater, 100 seats, touchscreens on every table, playing shows, whiskey tasting comedy show, you know, a game show, all varieties.
Love this, by the way, and so this is something that's really super unique. It's great scale, an employee, maybe 2 to 100 people. So, you know, it's cost effective. It looks like it's effective. I think this came out of the U-Ink experiment, probably, where you had, you know, a restaurant with a
food,
you're doing a lot of
you recognize a lot of those pieces. And you know, it really form factor, that design was heavily influenced with U-Ink, right? U-Ink had touchscreens at every table, distributed it throughout a whole restaurant. We really wanted, you know, to consolidate that competition so everybody could be playing, you know, live together and see each other, and so that was where the, you know, you nailed it.
So, and how big? You froze there, so I'm going to pause for a second. You're back.
No.
Oh,
good. I can hear you. Yeah, you frozen
me.
For me, but
it's not you. It's
this
me.
Is working.
Okay. and Alex was saying I need a better internet connection. In order to do that, I'd have to stop changing my amazing lifestyle of being in amazing places all the time, and so I'm not willing to make that sacrifice. But thank you for the suggestion.
Fair enough.
There's some questions in the chat I want to go back to. Augmented reality. Any plans there? How do you feel about it?
Great. Yeah, I mean, love augmented reality, love the promise of it. I mean, I think AR is amazing. I think there's a couple of threads. The hardware, I don't really feel is there yet, or the software. And so I think we've got a little bit of ways to go before there's devices that I'll put in the hands of the public. On your own phone, clearly there's AR there. We've seen people resistant in general to using their own phones for experiences. And it's wild. It's this paradox. You've got the phone, you stare at it 11 hours a day, you're using it constantly. And yet in public, for me to say, hey, download an app and you're going to get all this fancy, stuff you can do. And people are like, whoa, 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 what are you installing on my phone? And Eric and I made so many different experiences before even opening this park that required your own phone, and people have a weird hesitation to doing it. And so, even AR on your own phone has sort of
and it seems incongruent with your whole brand strategy, which is bringing people together in the social and get them away from the phone, right?
Yeah. Like, it's interesting. If there was an experience that was just on your phone, but we had to work together as a group in order to go on a scavenger hunt around the park, and it was a little bit like Magic Quest or something like that, that I could see getting super, exciting. But yeah, right now it's a little bit.
And so Bill Freeman's asking about, he made a comment about redemption. And, in a lot of these family entertainment centers, you play for points and you get prizes. Is there any thinking around any sort of redemption component or prizing component within your business plan?
Yeah, that was another one we thought a lot about and, ended up not implementing right out of the gates. I mean, it's something that is interesting. We felt like we could always add it, but it would be harder to take it away. And we wanted to get it, really get the model right without it. So,
yeah.
And then
Alex, when you were talking about motion sickness, Alex was asking, do you have anything in there that and this is my framing of his question, which is there anything in there or out there that you've seen that might trigger motion sickness, but the experience is so amazing you're going to do it anyway?
I mean, even our own battle zone, that has a little bit of movement. If you are super sensitive, you might get nauseous. But we really worked a lot to minimize that. So I think, we've even seen with our own feedback, it's a real tiny subset of people who might be getting, sick in VR in general. I just, so much stuff that moves the camera now. I just close my eyes until it's over.
Super sensitive. Now you've got Birdly in there, which is really interesting. I count Birdly among my top VR experiences, and so it's super expensive, but it's always being used. And I don't know, what do you guys charge? It's like a 3-minute experience. What do you guys charge for that?
It's magical. People absolutely love it, and the idea of being able to be a bird fulfills a very base human desire, and it's one of those where if you were to really try to make yourself sick, if you fly very close to the ground and stay up really close to the ground, that's a pretty surefire recipe. But for the most part, you have to really want to put yourself in that position. But it's great. People love it. They talk about it. They think, hey, you can fly like a bird. When have you ever gotten that option? And it's important. I think some folks, often don't recognize the difference between the headset and the content on the headset. But what your body is doing is important, right? Being able to lean forward, flap your wings, control the tilt with your hands, those things really complete the immersion of making you feel, like you're flying. If you were just doing that with 2 controllers standing up, it wouldn't feel nearly as amazing as diving with the wind in your face. And
it was transformational really for me the first time I did it. And I looked over and I could see my wings, and I was able to move my hands and the feathers were fluttering. And I was like,
and as you move
it was mind blowing. Yeah.
Magical.
Now they've come out with some new games recently. One, I think you're a pteranodon or some whatever the flying birds are.
Pterodactyl.
And then I just thought, now they just did one in Paris that I did, and they have a new hardware platform that wasn't quite as good. I know they're trying to take cost out of it, I think they've made some sacrifices to the quality and precision of the movement, and there was a little bit more thickness. But I undersea adventure, and it was weird because you're following a sea turtle, and I'm gonna kill my camera, by the way. Nobody needs to look at me. And you're not really like, you're flapping your arms, but you don't need to as much, and you're on a bit more of a rail mission. And yeah, and it was a bit undersea, save the planet-ish, narrative around it. So they're trying to build some story into it. But I felt like it was a step back for them. It'll be interesting to see if you guys get it and what you guys think of it.
Yeah, I haven't played. I'm excited. I've loved their stuff.
Yeah.
So it'll be neat to do that. It reminds me a little bit of the blue at Dreamscape, which I just love.
Let's talk about your favorite light. So VR.
So
Let's talk about your favorite VR, because I think Dreamscape has done an amazing job of creating these evocative experiences, and their marketing is the best I've seen in VR, like hands down. And you walk in and you see departure times in a lobby. Are you losing me? I hear you're texting something. Okay.
Yeah, and I was just responding.
And so you get this. Anyway. What's the best VR you've done? Like, or what's your favorite VR experiences, businesses, besides your own, obviously?
Yeah, I just got an Oculus Quest. That thing's amazing. It's such a incredible device, and I think a breakout moment for VR in general. It's all, the tracking is all on the headset, so you don't need to install, devices. It pairs perfectly with your phone, and there's a rich store. So there's really a lot of options. Beat Saber is incredible. You've played VR, you've tried Beat Saber. It's so fun. My little brother puts weights on his arms and his legs, and that's his workout routine. So Beat Saber is fantastic. I love asymmetric games, and I love them because they're social, right? This is where you're in VR, keep talking and nobody explodes. You're in VR, Bob, looking at the bomb. I am outside VR with a couple of friends, and we have the printed manual for the bomb. We're all working together to try to disarm this bomb, but you don't have the manual and we can't see the bomb. So, Bob, how many wires are there? What color are they? You're like, well, there's 2 yellow, a green, and we're like, okay, go, 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 go. All right, cut the green one. And so we're having to work together, and this is super exciting because we just got 4 or 5 people entertained and only 1 person in VR, which is wonderful from a throughput standpoint. It's wonderful from a cost-saving standpoint. So asymmetric VR is amazing. I just played Akron, Attack of the Squirrels, which is so fun because one person's in VR as this evil tree. Up to, I don't know, 5 or 6 other people have iOS devices, and they are the squirrels trying to steal the acorns from the tree, and they're basically controlling it, like a regular video game. And it's a blast, because the evil tree is sitting there, throwing your stuff at the squirrels and whatever. But now, I want to be able to try it both as the squirrel and as the tree. I was able to play it with literally my 4-year-old niece, and she had a blast. So I think that the asymmetric stuff is really special.
And are you going to bring any of that stuff? Like, is that licensable to arcades, or are you going to bring any of that in? Because it sounds like a perfect
fit.
Place.
We are constantly looking for that, new stuff like that. And so it's usually an independent, individual conversation with the creator. Something like Keep Talking, Nobody Explodes, I think, is in Springboard right now. And so it just depends on the property, but we're always looking for new stuff.
And so you can hear the rain now. One of the beautiful things about the windward side of the Hawaiian Islands is it's constantly raining.
Oh yeah.
How do you, and so are you, so there was a previous question, are you using Springboard to manage all, the content in there? And how does that work for you? Because you've got a bit of a different operation.
Yeah, it's been great. We've been using Springboard as the tool. You get to customize which apps are available. And they've made it easy to, they take care of paying the developers depending on how much time people are playing it. And so it's, super turnkey.
Have you experimented with it? I know Nancy Bennett in your organization is like one of the goddesses of virtual reality for decades. And
yeah, well, I mean, remember, before 2-Bit we ever opened this park, we were, helping brands build, new showcases of their technology and their IP. We helped Samsung launch VR at the Super Bowl and the Olympics, and we created some of the first VR 360 videos of this sort of second coming of VR. So we did a lot of it in 2013 and 2014. In general, I'm not a huge fan of 360 video. I don't think that it is particularly compelling. The most amazing stuff that I've done in VR was not 360 video. A lot of the approaches to 360 video is sort of taking a traditional 2D filmmaking approach and smashing it on top of 3D or 360, which doesn't really work, because the part that always drives me nuts is, am I looking in the right place? Or should I be looking over here? I constantly have this moment of this feeling like I'm missing stuff. And so I think that it's that, that's problematic. I much prefer the rendered stuff. And I think, though, the work that has happened in 360 video is going to be invaluable for this next phase of volumetric video, photogrammetry, the kinds of creations you can create that are not animated. They look like real life, but you still get to walk around them in facilitated by.
So speaking about that, there's a company called Imverse that launched a concept at LA recently, and it was using, I think they're using the Azure cameras, the new Kinect Azure cameras to, I think they were using Kinect, but they'll move to Azure to create kind of volumetric capture, hologram escape room game. Did you see any of their, and it's going to be based on, their first content is based on MacGyver, which is great for an escape room. Did you see it, and have you heard of it?
So perfect for an escape room.
Yeah.
I can't wait to try it. I'd heard about it. I haven't seen it, but I think that's a great application for volumetric video, adapted to an escape room is genius.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So what's, I want to make sure I hit all these questions too, because there's so many of them coming in. There's a bunch of them around pricing.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know how,
I see.
I don't know how close you are on pricing into the business, because I know you're CEO and you're working on expansion strategy, but.
Yeah, we're learning a lot about it. You mentioned, I see Birdly there. We charge $7 for Birdly, and so we're experimenting with what the right level is for pricing. Depends on the length of the game and whatnot. But you're in the sort of $5 to $15 range, depending on the length of the experience and
now I when I was there, I've been there a couple of times, and this was early. I haven't been very recently, but I do some observational research when I'm at any location and watch and try to get a feel for what the average spend was. Are you willing to say that, or should I guess and you can tell me high or low?
Well, you know what? We're gonna not talk about that just yet. We've got sort of some huge announcements coming, so I'm gonna just be completely tight.
Cool.
Sorry.
So yeah, I think that when I was there, I estimated it was probably in the 40 to 45, and you don't have to comment, in the $40 to $45 range. And again, one night, it was a weekend night, and I know it's different based on day parts and all kinds of stuff and psychographics, and it was fairly early in, but I was surprised at how much money people were spending. Like it felt high to me. Has it met your expectations? Has it exceeded your expectations? Can you talk at all about it? And
yeah, it's really, it's exceeded my expectations. It's been awesome. My big terror was that we were going to get the gamer nerds and nobody else. And Friday night, this place looks like a Hollywood club, except instead of dancing, people are playing games. But they're coming dressed up on dates, big groups, bachelorette parties, whatever. Yeah. And so that part's been super exciting. And that it's sort of underscored for me. Hey, play is universal. We all like games. It's just a question of what game. I think that there was this dark time, in the 90s and the aughties where gamer meant something specific, right? Hardcore game, console game, and a smaller market. And then mobile was like, oh wait, everybody likes games. Do you like Scrabble or football or first person shooters?
Yeah, and the number of gamers now is like, it's like humans, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so you talked about, speaking of games, at VRLA in 2017, you were on one of my all-time favorite panels, and you said, you commented, and I've quoted you on this numerous times, that the hardware is a tax on the game. The console is a tax on the game, and nobody bought Xbox. They bought Halo, and they paid the Xbox tax. And you mentioned Quest being amazing, and Invader Immortal, which has come out, which is like the story-driven, VR experience.
Episodic. They just had episode 2 drop.
Nobody's fucking talking about it. I still don't see the volumes and the traction. And I know Oculus says we're selling them as fast as we can make them, but as a software company, that could just be because they don't understand how to manage supply chain and they can't build them fast enough. Like, what's your take and prediction on Quest and its impact on the consumer market?
I really think it's about to happen. I really, I'm an optimist in general, so take that with a grain of salt, but I really do believe that it's finally there, right? It's easy to use. It's $400. You don't need to dedicate a room to it. It's just all the things that were little niddly annoying things about the early versions are gone, and so it's, and there's great content. If you were to just download Beat Saber, Super Hot, Dance Central, there's 4 or 5 games, I Expect You to Die is such a freaking incredible game. You have to play it.
But what about the fact that Xbox Kinect was the fastest selling piece of consumer hardware, consumer electronics hardware in history when it released, and they sold 87 million units or something like that, and it died because it was a little bit of a pain in the ass. You had to move furniture, and stuff like that. And VR is that, plus it's isolating generally. And 3D TV died because people didn't want to wear glasses, and that wasn't isolating, but it was awkward. Like, I still feel like those things are massive headwinds for VR.
I sort of agree, because I do think that people are starting to realize, hey, this is really different, and it's, 3D, going from regular TV watching to 3D watching, you're sort of, compromising my regular TV experience. VR is a new thing, and it really is like a new way to interact. The concept, so the content needs to be different. The way we think about it is different. And, I think that the second people get in there one time and they have a magical experience in Beat Saber, your brain changes and you realize, hey, this is for me. This is super cool. And I've seen actually multiple tweets, looking at the 2 Bit Circus Instagram, where people are like, oh my God, I just came from 2 Bit Circus. I bought my Quest immediately. I feel like we almost need to have a referral program or something, because, if this is your first time trying it, now it's like,
and I think part of the challenge is I don't think Oculus knows how to market a hardware product. And I think that when you look at companies like Xbox and Sony, Microsoft, like Nintendo, those are consumer product companies, or they created consumer product divisions, and they really learned how to market hardware and retail, and to how to do retail activations and promotions to get in the Sunday Circular, and all that shit still matters. And I don't think they have a clue on how to do that.
Well, what's just wild is, right as, if you rewind, right as Facebook was buying Oculus, was right as location-based VR was taking off. And, you remember this, Bob, they sent cease and desists to everybody using VR in public. Oculus did, and Vive didn't. And Chuck E. Cheese had deployed a huge, install. There was all these installs going out, and they sent cease and desist to everybody using an Oculus. And, and in the meantime, everybody just kept building content and location-based experiences using the Vive. And so consequently, the Vive sort of won in out of home. And so I think that, Oculus is having to sort of recover a little bit from that early decision. But at that time, you can see the logic of the lawyers, because people were like, oh my God, if we put a kid in there, is it going to melt their brains? Like there was, a whole worry around not being able to separate memories from VR experiences. And so it's,
and I do think they've learned, like they came out last week at OC6 and said they're going to be supporting arcades with Quest. And that brings up another, like an existential challenge, which, I've been writing about since 2016, which is the arcade industry died because of the console industry, and the console industry wasn't willing to evolve. The arcade industry wasn't willing to evolve to stay relevant, and home gaming got better than arcade gaming. And then they pivoted to redemption, which are, these basically kiddie casinos. And so you know, the VR arcades, how are they going to need to evolve? What do they need to do to survive? Because if it takes off in the home, then these 10 by 10 Vive booths are dead. Like no one's going to go and rent by the hour or by the minute something they can do for $400 or for free at home once they buy it. What would your recommendation to be somebody who's running a 10 booth Vive arcade, to assuming that Quest takes off and VR in the home happens the next year or two? What's your advice?
You know, I mean, it's just all about the content. I really, you know, I go back to that, you know, it's so less about the tech, it's about the great content. And there's some content that's just going to be better in public. You know, you and I, if we wanted to play Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, you know, there's some setup at home. In public, that's just all done and it's turnkey and we can go. And so I do think that you know, the wonderful thing about the Quest happening and VR momentum happening is that, you know, it increases the distribution numbers. And so there's more reason for people to create content, more dollars chasing the returns possible. And so I think that they, you know, I mean, we need, you know, more creators out there creating awesome, and then, you know, folks, you know, searching for good stuff. And, you know, I hope that we end up with, you know, more things that look like Xterion and Hologate that are platforms that, you know, hey, I'm a developer, I can publish my content out through this nice big channel and expect a return. Because if I'm just going to A/B test a solution for home of millions of users or a solution for public for thousands of users, you'll make the decision every time. So I do think that, you know, scale is so
what's next for you? Last question. What's next for you guys? I know you're flying around the world trying to figure out what your expansion strategy is. You know, what's next for Two Bit Circus besides getting the data right?
Oh man. Well, you know, we've got two parallel threads. You know, one is expansion, and the other is, you know, bringing LA out of beta, getting it to 1.0. And so we're racing super fast on that. You'll see some really fun announcements coming over the next, you know, 2 months, which is both, you know, the things that we're adding into LA and all of the stuff that we have coming. You know, we've got a lot of new attractions coming on the floor. We're going to fix that under attraction problem, and then you know, and then additional sites. You know, we've surveyed all over. We've spent a ton of time. You know, our wonderful president Kim Schaefer brought her head of real estate over from Great Wolf Lodge, and so he and I have been really finding a ton of sites. And so we're gonna run super fast, get this out there. You know, many places.
That's amazing. Brent Bushnell, I cannot thank you enough. I can't tell you how proud I am. I was, you know, I was there at, I think which was the initial launch of at UCLA at that innovation conference where you were. Would somebody pay $20 for a ticket to this thing? And have just watched you put your, you know, your life and your passion and your heart into this thing, and to Eric and the whole team there, so much congratulations and aloha from me to you, my friend. Will you be at IAPA?
You're awesome, dude. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Bob. Thanks everybody for watching.
Will you be at IAPA?
You know, I'm going to miss it this year. We're going to have our head of attractions, Andy's going to be there. But, you know, please, folks, when you come to LA, come hang out. We got, you know, some fun stuff coming up. Hopefully we see you at the anti-gala.
Yeah, hopefully I'll see you at the anti-gala. I love you, brother.
Fuck yeah. Thanks, brother. I love you.
Bye.
See ya. Bye, guys.